we're listening to a part 2 answer. The theme is travel. And so it's asking you to talk about a memorable journey you have made. Okay, so they want you to know where you were going, how you were traveling, why you were making the journey, and, what specifically made the journey so memorable. Okay, so this is kind of like, I think, a more challenging topic because it's not everyone has had memorable journeys. Do you know what I mean? Like, not everyone, especially recently where people haven't been able to travel because of COVID. I think if I got this, I would sort of have to take a couple of seconds to try and think of any strong memories I have of a journey. So it might be a couple of years ago. So I think this is kind of a challenging topic to try and make up a story about. So I'd say, unless you're very good at lying, just to pick any strong memory and then maybe just insert one lie about what made it memorable. So, something like that. But let's see what this candidate has done.
So now I'm going to talk about a memorable journey I have made, and it was about 5 months ago. I went to Taean with my friends. Taean is a place which is nearby sea, and there is a good camping place in there. One of my friends had his own car, so we went there by his car. And as I mentioned, Taean has sea, so we could fishing there. So that's why we chose Taean. And at the moment we pitched our tents on our camping area, and in the evening we had some shrimps and meat together with some alcohol. So, and in front of our tent there was a beautiful ocean view. So everything was beautiful then. So I liked this journey, and it's very meaningful for me.
Okay, so interesting. So this candidate made like a good attempt to talk about a meaningful journey. Talking about a trip that he'd taken with his friends. I think that's a totally fine answer to the question. First thing, you probably tell us you're listening, is the fluency. There was a lot of pauses and hesitations in his answer. I think it felt to me more like he was just trying to think of what he was going to say. He was thinking about information, not necessarily thinking about translating words. So my advice for him is potentially use his preparation time more, make more memos or make more notes on your paper to make you have a clear plan so you know what you're going to talk about next. But it slowed his speech down, and he had to self-correct a couple of times where he went back and changed one of the words that he used. So that is going to bring down his fluency score, unfortunately. In terms of pronunciation, his pronunciation was reasonably consistent. There was one or two issues. He talked about pitching a tent, but he did a thing where he sort of really emphasizes the pitched, like the ED too much. Actually, when you listen to a native speaker, especially someone from the UK, listen to how I say the word. So I go pitched. I pitched a tent. We went to the camping ground and pitched a tent. So what sound am I actually making at the end of the word? Pitched. It actually sounds more like a T, right, than it does. I'm not going pitched. Pitched, there's not actually too much of a D sound. It actually sounds more like a T. It's that very short burst of air coming out of my mouth. So I think it comes from reading. It has the ED sound. I know, I'm sorry, English is not consistent. So rather than going pitched, it's more natural and more native, like just go pitched. Okay, and then you've got the the past tense of it. Okay, so that's something I would advise him to work on. And there was one other thing when he talked about barbecuing. He said we had some blank with meat together. He was talking about barbecuing something else on the barbecue alongside the meat. It sounded like string. He might have said string, but I wasn't really clear on what he said. So that was one word I wasn't sure, even listening again, what exactly he was trying to say. So just those two words, I think, are something this candidate can work on. In terms of vocabulary, I thought okay, pretty basic, but consistent vocabulary. There was an issue where at the end of his answer, he repeated the word beautiful twice. So he said, there was a beautiful ocean view. Everything was beautiful. So this repetition of beautiful is not really making the best use of his opportunity to show the examiner what he can do. So I would really recommend that he changes up one of those words. There was a stunning ocean view. Everything was so beautiful is a perfectly fine, perfectly adequate thing to say. It just needs to be given a little bit more variety, a little bit more oomph. In terms of grammar, there was a couple of sort of grammar issues that I had in his answer. He talked about where he was going is nearby sea. It should be nearby the sea. So he's missing a determiner there. He talked about good camping place. There is a good camping place in there. Okay, but we don't need the word in. So there's good camping place there. He says we went there by his car. This is like one of those tricky things. If you said we went there by car, that's correct. We went there by his car. I don't know, it sounds strange to me as a native speaker. So I would recommend that it should be changed to we went there using his car, or he drove us there would be a much more natural way to say that. He had a couple of issues with his tenses. We could fishing there. We could go fishing there was something that was a mistake. But everything he said was understandable. I think he's in this candidate needs to work on being more consistent with his grammar, like fixing these small mistakes, especially about the prepositions and determiners and articles, like I think can easily something he can focus on. And then also fluency, so making better use of his 1 minute preparation time. Okay, so let's look and see what he did for his second answer.
Do young people generally prefer to spend holidays with their family or with their friends? I think most of children in Korea want to spend their holidays with their friends because actually spending their time with their friends is more funny and exciting than their family. But I think sometimes they have to spend their holidays with their family. Can you explain how people benefit from having a holiday from work or study? Actually, modern society is very busy, so most people in Korea, when they have their holiday, then they just want to take a rest at their home. But someone who likes to enjoy some outdoor activities, then they prefer to go camping with their family, and others enjoy to hang out with their friends.
Okay, so those were two reasonably good answers. The candidate clearly understood the question. They made a decent attempt to answer it. They showed me an opinion. So those are all sort of good things. Same issues with fluency as we had in the first question. Slowness, hesitation, repetition of information, sounding unsure. And this time it sounded more like they were sort of translating in their head as they were going more than the previous answer. So that's kind of what lets you down a bit in your fluency. In terms of pronunciation, there was one thing I wanted to sort of pull up, which is kind of a common pronunciation thing that I hear a lot of people say, which is the pronunciation of people. So a lot of people who aren't native speakers, and actually sort of, they end up putting more emphasis on the final syllable, okay? So I'm going to listen to me reading it twice, okay? I'm going to read it the A way and I'm going to read it the B way, and think about which one sounds more correct to you. People. 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 Okay, so one of the issues a lot of my students do is they end up doing it this B way, which is incorrect, which is putting too much emphasis on the pull at the end. People. Okay, people, like that kind of, it doesn't quite sound correct. I know what word you're trying to say, but it sounds a little bit incorrect to me. So you've got to make sure that you're sort of putting the emphasis on the start. People. Okay, that should be the most emphasis on that. How do you create emphasis in a word? By varying your tone, by varying your volume, by varying how long the sound is. People, okay? People, okay? I've done it with my volume there. So that was just he did a slightly odd pronunciation of people, which I just wanted to highlight because it's very common. It's something a lot of students make. The other thing I just wanted to pull up in terms of vocabulary is that in the questions asking about sort of young people, and he focuses his answers on children. Which is fine. Children are young people, but generally in English, when we refer to young people, we mean teenagers or young adults. So young people tends to be from basically, I would say, middle school to university, young people or young adults. So when my parents refer to young people music, they mean the music that people age maybe between 14 and like 23 listen to. So it's that kind of like young adults kind of group. Children tends to refer specifically to sort of elementary school or younger. That's a child. And then you tend to get into teenagers tend to be young people. So he talked about children in his answer, which is fine. I wouldn't pull him up too much about that. But there's just this real distinction in how native speakers use that phrase. I liked how he used the vocabulary hangout to talk about hanging out with his friends. That was quite natural native speaker like. And then the only other thing I wanted to pull up was grammar, where he talks about why people want to spend more time with their family. They say spending time with their friends is more funny than spending time with their family. Instead of funny, it should be spending time is more fun than spending time with their family. So overall, I would say kind of a consistent level with the first question, not a lot stronger, not a lot weaker, but quite consistently on the same level. So in terms of pronunciation, this kind of actually showed me a bit of variety with their voice. They did have some intonation. There was just a couple of issues with a little bit of their pronunciation. So I guess for pronunciation, I would, put them at a 6. Reasonably good, understandable, a couple of issues. Vocabulary, I thought they really didn't show me enough variety of words, especially in part 2, talking about their holiday. The vocabulary was really quite basic. So I would want to sort of put them at a sort of a 5 for that. In terms of grammar, the second answer was a little bit stronger in terms of grammar. But in part 2, they really weren't consistent enough, and they weren't accurate enough for me to give them much higher. So I would sort of give a 5 for that. In terms of fluency and coherence, well, a lot of sort of pauses, self-corrections, and hesitations. So again, a sort of a level 5 for that. So I think this candidate was quite strong in that they showed me a lot of like variation with their tone and with their voice in terms of pronunciation. It wasn't too bad. But everything else was slightly weaker. So it is coming out as sort of a level 5 overall. And I would really encourage this candidate to sort of how to work on your fluency and coherence, okay? First, for IELTS, it's practice. So much of it is practice. There's only so many topics your IELTS examiner can ask you. Go online, print off a list of practice IELTS questions, and just record them all into your phone. Practice saying them a couple of times. And then that's really going to help you when you get into the exam. Really, no matter what topic they ask you, you've already kind of practiced ahead of time. That's really going to help your fluency. And vocabulary, okay? This candidate really needs to work on improving the type of vocabulary they're using or the level of academic weight of their vocabulary. That's something else you can do self-study. Like I said, when you're recording your answers for your fluency, listen back to it and write down all the adjectives that you're using. Okay, start with adjectives, then move on to verbs, then do it again for nouns, okay? And start to see if there are some patterns. There are certain words that you use all the time, and then re-record yourself using improved words. Okay, so that's my best self-study tip for improving your vocabulary. But overall, I thought this candidate gave a good go, like a nice attempt to answer all the questions. Just in terms of grammar and vocabulary, really can improve.